Hey everybody, good morning and welcome back to Reaper Pro-Tips with me, your host Anne, and disembodied hands Justin and Quindy, and sometimes even John. I see some resubs, 9 cents change with Prime 18 months sub and a half anniversary. Grats and thanks. And then we have Socrates. Always nice to have a philosopher in the house. 15 months at tier 1, thank you. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Poof. Poof, a Wild Rex appears. Yay! Hi, everybody. Yes, indeedy. It's a day. It's another day. It's a Wednesday. It's a Golem Wednesday. Yay! We're going to do some metal today, I think. Metal! We're getting metal. We just need to grab our metal colors. And our gloss sealer. Where'd my gloss sealer go? I think I've got some prototype gloss over here. Yeah, I do. Good. You know that I'm Anne, and you know that I made the paint line when I've got things like this. My prototypes. My unlabeled prototypes, and I'm still using them. Yo, Bryce. I'm kind of sniffly today. I think there's something in the air trying to attack me, but I should be okay. Let's see here. So we don't want that. We actually want... Remember, we're using all of core colors. And 51. And Pearl White. There we go. Those guys. So, but I'm a little sniffly. Apologies, guys. Yeah, we'll do that. I've got my scorched metal out for the other bits in case. And I think we're good. Now we just need to figure out what I'm going to use. So many pretty colors that I could use for these washes. We're going to do washes today, guys. Because metallics. And we need to, now that we've got our really, really bright metallic color, we need to sink that. We need to like damp it down so that we can bring it back up and make it all pretty. But we need to tarnish it. We need to beat it up. We need to do stuff so that when we come in and want to highlight all these fiddly bits, the fiddly bits will show up. So that means washes and lots of them. And I need to find a place for my saddle brown because right now it is... What are you doing there? Oh, okay. I have all sorts of weird colors kind of camped out in the middle of one of my sections here in my drawer. Inventorying. Nice. Bones 5. Alright. And we've got our gloss sealer, and now we need colors. So colors we could use for bronze. We're definitely going to use a dark green for part of this. And I think I mentioned using ancient oak. We could also use a swamp green. There's ancient oak. Let me get out what I got. Pine green could be, but it needs to be darkened down a little bit, I think. Any of these could be darkened down a bit for the initial wash. But they're all, as you can look at them, you can see that if you compare like their butts, they're all dark greens. Pine green is more of a yellowy dark green. I like that one a lot. Another color that often was used for this, I used to use peacock green a lot. Swamp green is more of an olivey color, but still works for bronze verdigris. And then, of course, ancient oak is just actually a tad lighter. It's a bit bluer. It's a bit cooler and grayer. So, but yeah. So we're looking at those. Those are the dark greens that I have out right now. You'll notice I don't have any really, really dark greens out here right now. And the reason is that I think it's more versatile to have something that doesn't have quite as heavy a load of black in it. Or if it does, like swamp green, it's just like, you know, a type of green that I want. Swamp, of course, is canceled. A lot of you have it anyway. But because it is, we'll put it away. But you can remember that it is a valid color for doing this. But yeah, I consider having a bit more vivid greens. I can always add dark to them. Like, you can always add, like, a dark purple, a dark blue, a dark brown to these to make them darker. Then again, also the other canceled color that I have often used, again, peacock green. And again, you can see that it's exactly the same shade as far as how dark it is as the pine green. Whereas the ancient oak is just a little bit more lively. And again, peacock is canceled, but peacock is the color I used to use all the time for bronze verdigris. So can make a note that swamp green and peacock green, if you own them, because a lot of you have been in the hobby for a while and owned a lot of Reaper paints prior to those cancellations, you guys can make a note that those are perfectly valid colors for this. I'm just going to set some things out of the way here. There we go. And so that was, we have to choose a dark green. We might even do just a mix of these just to make it interesting. I would be inclined to use more of the pine green and less the ancient oak, simply because we've got a lot of really vibrant colors here. And I would use this one if we were working with a more muted color scheme, because you can see that it's kind of grayish. So try to match, like, if you're going to use grayish colors or grayed out colors, things like that, what I call muted colors, try to match, like, the other colors you're using to the level of muted that you're doing. Here we've got a lot of pretty bright colors. This purple's pretty vibrant. We've already said we're probably keeping it for up here, even if we don't keep it for down there. You know, we've got this orange shift for the glow that's actually pretty vibrant. And our bronze is pretty bright and pretty orange. So all things considered, this might not be the best call for verdigris color, because it's kind of lighter and grayed out. And our other colors that we're using are not grayed out. So you are at 60% of your usual efficiency. Well, it's good that you have somebody to give you that outside opinion. Unless it's annoying, then it's not useful. All right, so some things that we could do. And when I'm doing metal, when I'm trying to pick colors to put washes onto metal, what I'm trying to do is pick a variety of different colors. And we're not just going to stop at one wash on this. We're going to stop at around 3, I think. Because it gives more of a complex and interesting effect. And usually I'm picking things like, for a gold or bronze or copper color, I'm picking things like a dark red, dark green, dark purple. Often I won't pick a dark blue because that's directly complementary, so it's going to act like black. It's going to really dim down the bronze. If we want that, then we might go with Death Knight or a blue liner. Death Knight has a lot of blue in it. It also has a lot of purple. Another color we could go with for this wash would be Kraken Ink. Those would be valid. And then let's see what dark reds I have here. Dragon's a little light. Probably Urgathoa. Urgathoa would be from Pathfinder. Always an excellent red, and you should pick this up. Absolutely. This one, of course, is in the what I call the surf and turf. The pirate fast palette. I always call it the surf and turf because I can never remember its actual name. So like, this is a good, if you're going to use colors, this is a good selection. The liners are excellent for this as well if you want to use liners instead or in addition, brown liner or walnut. Walnut's very heavy, and so if I use walnut on this or black and brown, which is its cousin, it's really going to be a heavy load and take down this color. So I may use brown liner if I want a neutral brown shadow. Now, the other thing to think about here when you're about to start this process is, what's my primary kind of undercolor? Like, what am I really trying to do here? Am I just trying to kind of dark it down and outline things, in which case brown liner might be our first choice? Am I trying to make this look more coppery or red bronze, in which case red might be my first choice? Or am I going heavy on the verdigris, in which case green might be my first choice? These two, the purples, are also, they just count as darkeners. They're just a little bit more interesting, so that I put them over here with the brown as far as what they do. Because when you put this purple or purple blue over this, it's really not going to show much of that color. If we wanted it to show more of a purple color in the shadows, we'd have to use a reddish purple, which is closer to the orange that we've got here. So we'd probably have to use Monarch. And the reason for that, guys, is again going back to our color wheel. So you didn't know you were going to get a lesson on washes and colors and all this stuff today, did you? You thought we were going to be boring like we always are, but we're not actually boring at all. So today we're not boring, and we're going to talk about color. Go away, Val. If you're in the chat, run. I know you hate it when I do this, but everyone else loves it. So there we go. So when you are looking at washes for colored washes for surfaces, and the washes are for a different color than your surface. So example, our metallic is definitely orangey and yellowy, right? And we're looking at putting blue, purple, brown, red, or green, right? So none of those things are orange or yellowy. So when you're looking at that, look at how the color crosses the color wheel to see what's going to happen. So if we count this as like an orange-yellow, then we're right here at the yellow-orange. Blue-violet is directly across from it. And that means that these two colors are complements. Death Knight Black is a blue-violet. It's just a very, very dark blue-violet. And so what happens when you mix complements? They dull each other out. So you lose your yellow-orange, you lose your blue-violet. It ends up just looking like dark, and it'll dull down your orange and yellow. Do you get that? It's just like if you took these two colors and mixed them together. If you're layering them over top of each other, you sometimes get a slightly different effect layering a color over the top as opposed to mixing it. Because just the translucency and the way it interacts, especially over metallic. But in general, you're still going to see this effect happen. If you put a blue-violet wash over this guy, it's going to be kind of like putting a grayish or blackish wash over it, which, is fair because it's got a lot of black in it. I always use washes on metallics if I'm shading and doing high-quality work. This is the one example where if I'm doing a very high quality job on something, I will actually use a wash, is metallics, shaded metallics. Because you got to dull down, you got to darken that surface down before you can raise it up. And I think some of the best effects are gotten in this case by washes. Kirill totally converted me to this. Now, it's also still a targeted wash. It's not just slobbered everywhere. So, it does have some peculiarities. You already missed it, Agent Marble. You're going to have to go back and watch it. You already missed part of it. But anyway, so if we do this, this is a clue to us that it's going to just be a dark wash. It's essentially not going to it's not going to tint our metal toward a particular color it's close to. Whereas if we go with something like, one second, and purple's a lot the same, right? Because if you've got yellow, orange, and you go to purple, it's almost exactly across the color wheel. So if we use Kraken ink, it's still going to take it down. But if we use something, I'm just using my underlying paints as little rollers here. So let's say we use pine green. We've got a yellow, orange, and we've got a green. So what's going to happen here is it's going to cool down. Like it's going to pull the colors more together. So you're going to shift this yellow, orange, and it might end up looking more over here. It'll shift away from the warmth. You'll go more toward this side of the color wheel because you've got some connection point there. Like if you draw a line between here, you don't get mud. Whereas if you draw a line between any two complements, you tend to end up with brown or gray. Remember that? When you try to mix red and green, you get kind of a grayish color often. If you try to mix orange and blue, you often get a brown. Very mucky colors, right? So you have to think about that when you're applying washes as well, as you'll get a little bit of that shift. Even though you're not mixing the pigments, you're still laying them over each other. They still interact. With a wash, especially, it's transparent, right? So that transparency allows those colors to interact as if you'd mixed them. Not quite the same, but a lot of the same functionality will be observed. It's just the way the metallic looks on camera, Monkey Ninja. Yeah, this is all just it's all just picking up the light. You can't really highlight a metallic effectively until you shade it, which is why we're talking about shading first. You can put metallic highlights on it, but until you actually put some shadows in there that are not reflective, it won't look crisp. And this guy has so much detail on him. Jazzy, essentially, I do a lot of NMM on this show. A lot of non-metallic metal. And since this guy's a bronze golem, and he's big, and so it's like, I could have done it in NMM bronze, but I would never have finished the whole thing. Instead, I decided to do metallics, mostly because people are like, I almost never do metallics. But he's a great subject for it, because people are going to paint this guy in metallics for sure. So That's why I decided to do it this way, because I do like to give people tips that are actually functional. I doubt there's anybody out there, except maybe Bryce out there in the chat, who is a very high-level painter, who would consider doing this guy at NMM. So most people watching the stream are going to want to do them in metallics, so that's what I'm doing. Also, it lets me talk about things like washes and taking down your shading before you try to highlight your metallics. A lot of people start by just using a dark metallic, but that actually doesn't give you as good results as shading with regular paint, in my opinion. So that is what the thought process. That's what the thought process was. Sorry, I was just checking up on chat. I'm a little bit of squirrel today, mostly because I'm just like, chat. So yeah, so then if we look at our red, we've got the opposite, right? We're already kind of sitting at a yellow-orange, and now we're looking at going to a red. It's got a little bit of violet in it, but it's still going to cross over this area, right? So what it's going to do is it's going to take our, if we went first with the red, it would take our metals very much into the orange section. So that's a good argument for red, for the bronze. If we wanted to go that way, if we wanted to accentuate oranginess and reddishness in our bronze, then the first wash should be this. And speaking of first washes, that's why we're talking about this, because the first wash you choose, and remember I said we're going to do at least 3 of these colors. The first wash you choose is going to have the highest color impact on your underlying metallic, because you're putting it right over the top. So if you start out with like a silver metallic and you start with a brown wash, you're going to add that oiliness. It's going to get that oiliness and that brownish color, kind of like dingy and stuff like that. And that's going to remain your strongest. Even if you put green and red washes on over that, that brown still sets the tone for everything that follows it. Every wash after the first has a little less impact, unless you make them super heavy. But when you do that, then you block off your metallic. Remember, part of the point is to keep a little bit of our metallic like showing, right? We want to be able to see it, highlight it, blend it, do all that fun stuff. So you do, if you want a heavily soiled area, you absolutely build up your washes until they are opaque. But otherwise, like, you don't, in a lot of areas you don't. So you don't always use super high, super thick washes on metal like this. Depending. Like, if you were going to do something really simple, say you just wanted to do this guy for the gaming table, then yeah, pick one wash that kind of exemplifies what you want out of it and do it. Or maybe if you're using a colored wash, like you really want to shift this red, start with your red, but then go to your brown liner over the top, because you do want your shadows to be dark enough that your highlights really pop out. And this guy's got a lot of tiny little details on his metal that are sculpted on, and you want to be able to pick those out. If you just do this dark red wash, it's not going to be quite as effective as doing both the red and the brown wash. So, like liner. So, yes. Do you guys get all that? Because, like, it's an art. Washes are an art. You never knew. You thought washes were, like, quick and dirty, right? But on metallics, all is fair. And washes are a great way to get some randomized and fun kind of patterns and colors and stuff going on. Maybe I should do a metallics class. Like, my metallics class would be so different from Michael Proctor's. Like, it'd have similarities, but then it'd have some differences. Like, so I think some profound differences, because I'm always looking at things from the control freak, and he's a loose painter. He's like David, and I'm just so precise that even in my washes are too precise. It's silly, but this is the way I use it. So, yeah, I hope there isn't a test. Yeah, well, see, every once in a while I have to surprise you guys and, like, bring up some funky thing we haven't talked about that's really in-depth and cool, and then you keep watching. Like, if I just, like, kept saying the same stuff, then it wouldn't be fun anymore. Eventually I'm going to run out of knowledge, and you're all going to leave. All right, coffee. Oh, Crowley, thank you for the resub. 21 months. Sweet. Yeah, we'd have to find a really good model for it. It's not like rocket science. Like, it sounds like a lot when you load it in the first time. But after you actually work with this, like, you get it. You're just like, oh, okay, first wash I put down has the highest color impact if it's a colored wash. If it's a, just a brown liner, then it's just going to make everything darker. Again, I could put colored washes over brown liner. It would still impact the metallics, but it wouldn't have as high impact. I hear a lawnmower. I'm going to close the window. 1 second, guys. Let me close the window and turn on my fan. So I know that's only going to get louder. There we go. And my fan. Yeah, they're like almost right under the window. The lawn people. The lawn people strike again. But yeah, it's not. It's interesting when you first work with it that you're just like, and then then it kind of grows on you. Yeah, there are a lot of purples in this one. It was Anne's last gasp. So you know the purples are there. I'm actually, I was just working on my PDF yesterday for you guys on the Patreon, and we're covering the other half of the Kickstarter colors this month in the $5 PDF. So we did the previous one last month. So this one we're covering Orchid Purple and Lotus Orange and Leaf Bud and the Rich Indigo, Wild Violet, and Black Indigo. All right, morning, Orcrist. Morning. We were just talking about metallics. Now we're going to make some colored washes for our metallics on this Golem. All right, so we'll use the Kirill, what I call the Kirill method here to build these washes, which means we're using, instead of the brush-on sealer that I usually use to build a wash, we're using gloss sealer. Reaper gloss sealer works just fine. Glad to hear it. I'm glad you guys like them. I mean, Black Indigo, like, it's really... Death Knight, if you like the Death Knight color, like the Death Knight black, this is a liner. It's very similar to Black Indigo. Black Indigo, I think, has a little more color punch to it. The Black Indigo is a regular paint, has quite good coverage, whereas the Death Knight Black is more a liner version of that. But they're both extremely useful. Oh, yeah, I know. I'm kind of scared about that. Our new house does not have AC. Because even though I was like, well, but if it gets smoky, it's going to suck. So, we'll see. We could pay a lot and get AC installed, but we'll see. We're going to just run with it. We're going to run with it and hope we don't get any really bad fires like last year. Or we'll have to get, like, some sort of, like, internal AC unit. Just to keep things civil. Although the house is pretty cool, even when it's all closed up. It just takes a perfect storm to make you really hate your existence, though, in a house with no AC. All right, so let's say, I think I want to go, do I want to go green? I have to really stop and ask myself now, is how heavy do I want the green to go? Do I really want it? And I think I do. So I think, because we've got red already, and we've got, like, orangey colors here, so we're all warm. And I really liked the green when I had it laid down as an undercoat for this color. So if I like the green enough to use it as an undercoat for this, then I may as well work my first wash off of it. Not in this area, Miss Tim. It's not crazy in this area. Because it's always, like, temperate here. Like, most of the year is 60s and 70s. So, you only regret it on days where it's really, like, really hot, like where it hits 90, but I spent 17 years in Texas. I'm not going to be the one melting. David will be the one melting. It's also a lot like Wisconsin, where I grew up, as far as the climate goes, like where it gets cool in the evenings. So even if you have a really hot day, you still get to 70 or even in the 60s in the evening. So it's the smoke. What Bryce is talking about is when you get fires where you get a lot of smoke in the air. That's where you really don't want to open up the windows. That's where you suffer. Right, exactly. Like, I moved to a totally different climate when I moved here to the South Bay area. I've got my box fan. I'm okay. I love David, but I don't want him standing over me with a fan all day. But yeah, totally. Think Egyptian slave boy. Shall I tell him you said that? I think he would not be amused. All right, so we're going to build this wash just like we build any wash. With 1 drop of this. We are not going to actually use water, though, unless we use 1 drop. I'll tell him. Yeah, this is a house built in the 50s. It's mid-century modern. It's really a cool house. but it does not currently have AC or ceiling fans. It has excellent ventilation as far as the number of windows and the size of things that you can open. Like, even just popping open a few windows, like, really makes a nice breeze through the house. So it's excellently constructed as far as air circulation goes. But yeah, I don't know, we'll see. It's an experiment. All right, so we're using our pine green. I'm going to just try pine green and see if I think it's a good enough color or if I need to maybe mitigate it a little. It is pretty intense. I'm going to look at this wash after. Gloss sealer always, I mean, it's the resins in it. It's just like white glue, Zen. So like Elmer's glue, it looks white, but it dries clear. Same with any sealer. It's going to look milky, and then it's going to dry clear. It's just the resins in it interrupting the light in a clear base. But once that all settles and the moisture leaves, then it goes clear. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, if I really start complaining, I mean, the other good thing is that we move in like at the end of August. So at the most, we just have like the very end of August and like, you know, the start mid, you know, through September. September's still pretty warm here. But after that, we got all the winter and spring to kind of see how the house is in the winter. And, you know, and then figure out how it is next summer when it starts warming up. All right, I'm going to put 1 drop of water. So far we've got 3 drops of sealer, 1 drop of water, and it's gloss sealer. And I've got 1 drop of paint. And the other thing I need is a little bit of my metallic. So I do need to mix up my metallic. So let's do that. Let's rock that. Remember, we are doing a 3-2-1. 3-2-1 mix, right? 3 of our ancient bronze, 2 of our new gold because I wanted to brighten it up and warm it up, and then 1 of pearl white to kind of give it a little bit of almost a muted appearance, and also to lighten it and brighten it. I wanted to make it light. I didn't want a dark metallic. Even though we ended up with something like this color, it's shinier because I used those other paints. This color, when you see a dark metallic, it already has a lot of pigment in it, which means it's not going to have as much shine to it. So you have to kind of make your judgment call. But I wanted to mix this up a little bit. Literally. It's an old house, Miss Dimp, so lighting tends to be installed. We're not going to do any changes to the house for the first year. We're going to live in the house and see. I think it's kind of silly to come into a brand new place and make assumptions about what you need, so I really want to see what we need. Well, yeah, see how it feels. Okay, we've got 3, 2, 1. But yeah, we certainly, I mean, we could, there are people who install like central heat and air in these houses because it's got a mostly flat roof. It's got a very, very slight roof gradient. And so a lot of people just pretty much work it off the roof. Because you don't have ducts, you don't have underpinning, and you don't have space in the walls for ducts. So you have to work it off the roof. It's interesting. But David really loves this design of house. So he realized when we started looking at houses that was what he wanted. So yeah, we'll see. I'm excited. I think it'll be fine. I mean, I have a high tolerance for heat, and I can always put on more clothes if it gets cold. Although it has heating. It has radiant heating. All right, so we should be good. So there's our metallic. There's our wash. Let us mix things up. I am going to add 1 drop of water to the metallic. If you're keeping track, you know that this is about a 6-to-1. That's about the most that I would thin metallics at this point for this particular usage. Metallics, as you know, are made with flakes. The flakes are solids. They are usually, they're mineral-based. And since they are mineral-based, they are heavy. They are heavier than water. They are rocks, people. They fall out of solution. That's why that it always is kind of dire when you work with them and put too much water in them. So I did decide to put a little bit. So I'm going to put a brush full of this into our green. It is going to change the look of our green because we're adding different pigments. I actually really like that color. That's cool. Ducks. No space for ducks or ducts. So if you look, you can see this is kind of smudgy. It's kind of almost jelly, and that's the sealer. Like, it's not going to be as watery as you're used to. It's thick. That is going to hold the pigment and the flake in suspension, because we do have a tiny bit of flake in there. We have a little bit of metallic. I am noticing, though, that this may not be dark enough. That may be the one problem. That was kind of my concern with pine green in the first place, was that it might not be dark enough. But I want that green, so I think I'm going to put it on in one area and see. Because I can always come back with other washes, right? So I'm going to put a bit of this around our ram's head and kind of judge and see if I like it or not. Because you can always adjust it. Yeah, I miss basements. Some places out here have them, but they tend to be not a lot. So, let's get close. So this does create a bit of verdigris look. We can see the metallics through it. It is a bit thick. I think overall, you can put it on, you can kind of look at it. The problem I'm having is it's not really dark. I'm going to actually wick a bunch of it off. The thing with metallics and with gloss sealer is you got to start, if you're going to pull it off, you got to be fast. Even though we're putting on a lot of it. Because already it's starting to set. Gloss sealers and metallic bases are made from pretty much the same stuff. It's a high acrylic content. The question is, do I want to just go with that, or do I want to actually make it darker off the bat? This is my question. I have to address it in myself. I could try to put a little bit more green in there as well. Let's put one more drop of green. That's there. And I actually think I want one more drop of water. Now, you want to tune it according to what you're going to do. And according to what you're going to do is what effect you want. So, for example, if I leave this thicker, I'll be able to make splotches and it won't all run together. So if I want a textured kind of shaded where there's stuff pooling and stuff, it's easier to do that if I leave it thicker and don't add more water. But if I want it to settle into cracks and stuff more evenly, like a traditional wash, then I want to add a little bit more water to this. You certainly can take that thinned stuff and work it up also. You can layer it up, make more and more layers of it to work it into like clumps of green. Just looking... Oh, yeah. Yuck. Yeah, that's dangerous, Dogfather. So I'm going to add one more drop of water in my brush. And that drop of green. And I'm going to see. So sometimes you've got to tune a little bit. Yeah, that's nice. That's darkened down my green a lot. I'm a lot happier with that. And it's going to be more flowy. So what I am going to do is I'm going to grab our metallic. I think I may think that 6:1 is a little thick. Hold on. We're going to put 12:1. Yeah, that's crazy hot. With the humidity, that's what makes it dangerous. I was reading about that the other day where when there's such high humidity that the body can't actually cool itself by sweating, that's when it's very, very dangerous to be outside. Because you get overheat super fast. That's why, like, low humidity is, is a bit better. Although you can still get in danger that way, but... Alright, so I thickened it up a bit. I added a whole nother 6 drops. Because I decided I wanted to be able to use this for touch-ups as well. So yeah, be careful. Take care of yourselves, people, when you're in the really hot. Texas has been getting more humid, too. I remember it as being not as humid when I first moved there. Almost 20 years back. But then by the time I left, we were definitely seeing, like, a lot of humidity. More humidity than I remembered in the summers. And it was hard. So I totally feel for you, Dogfather. Take care of yourself, please. And take care of your puppers, because the puppers don't have very good adaptive mechanisms either for that extreme heat if they have heavy coats. All right, so I went over the surface just a little bit with the metallic, just to brush up on the green parts that I did earlier. I wanted it to go bright again. I had a little bit that stuck in the cracks. Yeah, I bet major health warnings have been issued. Oh, wow. Color charts in the restroom to help you tell if you're dehydrated. A lot of people are, I've read. Like, a lot of us walk around slightly dehydrated without even realizing it. Just because we don't drink enough fluids. All right. Let us try this once again. Now I have a darker, thinner wash. I can see that there's definitely a change. If I compare, let's actually look at this. Let's do a comparison. Since we have our color wheel, since we've already gone into color wheel territory, I'm going to see what this is. Looks like value 4 when I'm sitting here in person. It's a little bit skewed when I've noticed this is a little skewed when we, well, no. That's about right. 4 to 5. So essentially you put the edge of the grayscale over the paint and you ask yourself, you kind of squint your eyes, and if you can't see that the edge is noticeably darker or lighter, then you're at the right place. So value 5 is what we look like. See it? How it kind of just blends in, especially if you squint. Hey, green users. I was looking at my models to try to figure out if I had a Bob model that I could do. I haven't painted a Rodolphe on here for a long time. Not since the Wraith, I think. So then look over here and see. You can see that the 7 is too light. The 8 is about right. And the 9 is too dark. So that means that this green is about an 8. And this is about a 5. So we're experiencing a 3-step difference between our midtone and our wash. And I would say that that's like the minimum. Like when I'd used the previous one, it was too light, in my opinion. So you always can use your color wheel for that to kind of make sure that your wash is dark enough. Let's see if that is dark enough, though. We may actually need to do more of a 4-step, 4 steps between. The thing is that paint-built washes dry lighter than they look wet. So this will not dry as dark as it looks here. So we may decide we need more. But remember also, this is just the first wash. So we can always go down by moving to other colors. So I think I want my kind of craptastic brush to apply this. Yeah, you crappy sable, you are my friend for washes. Because washes, you tend to like get a lot of it in the brush. And it's a thinned paint application, so it does have a tendency to wick up toward your ferrule. So using a lesser quality brush can be good. I still am going to use a sable, though, because it's softer, so it's going to be less inclined to produce bubbles. If you do use a Taklon and you notice bubbles, just give them a real quick blow on them. And yeah, that's actually much cooler. Just blow on them and the bubbles will go away. Like do a real quick focused. So I'm going to just get some of this green over the edge onto this metal. So it's good that it's a sable that does have a decent tip, even though it's kind of split. It's not nearly as good as my other sables, but it's good enough for washes, darn it. And I am being a little more targeted, you'll notice. I'm being more precise in how I'm applying my wash. But I do like this green and how it looks. It is dark enough, and it is bringing out some of the details, you see? It's also making the warmth of the glow effect really pick up, because it's a different color. So I am using a fair amount of my brush. You can see it deforms the tip. See that? How it's a glob of color. But I'm doing it very gently, and I am trying to stay more targeted. I'm putting the green over all of this, too. I won't necessarily use the other wash colors everywhere, but I decided I wanted the green everywhere to start with. And going slower and using a softer brush just means you don't have to worry as much about bubbles, and you can be a little more precise in your placement. I'm still putting quite a bit on there. You can see that it's pooling, and bringing out the details of that design. Although it's not bringing out a huge amount of detail yet. A darker wash would be needed to do that. So based on this, I'm going to say that about 3 steps on the color wheel grayscale are about the minimum for comparing your wash and your midtone, the color you're going to put it over. So we're definitely shifting our metallics green now. See how it's taking the orange right out of it. It's making it look more like a yellow metallic with a green wash over it. We're losing a lot of our orange. Remember I said that was going to happen because we were taking a yellow-orange metal and putting a green over the top of it. It's going to end up looking like it's in here. You won't totally lose the orange if the orange is in the flake, but it definitely takes it away from this warm color. Do you see that? So I like how this looks, so we're just going to jump in and do it. And again, you start with a big blob in the middle and move it out. But we are going to darken and tarnish this a lot more. Our future washes, though, won't go over the whole surface necessarily. That's the other thing. It's like putting on targeted washes, which is more like using washes for layering. That's something we're going to do with this model. And if you've got extra wash, you can just pull it around to the other side. Take some of this off of here. If you feel like you've got excess that you don't want pooling, just grab it with your brush. Pick up a little bit extra. That's a pretty cool bronzy look, isn't it? And especially once we bring in like even darker shadows in the brown tones, this is going to look even more like bronze. But even that is starting to look like a tarnished bronze. The only thing we're missing is like the dark tones. Yeah, see? That's exactly what I was looking for, Zito. I'm pretty happy with this. I agree. Oh, yeah, green users. Oh. That makes sense. Yeah, I was just saying, I wonder what it would take for for Julie to do a dragon pokey tool for me for my painting big. Like, we'd have to come to some sort of arrangement. Because, you know, a dragon head pokey tool would be cool. I'm surprised nobody has yet wanted one. But anyway, I totally get it was easier to fit it in because we were doing the other one. Pokey tools they're the new hot accessory item. Oh, I wish I had thunder and lightning. I was listening to a thunderstorm recording the other night to help me get to sleep because I miss them so much. I miss the sound of rain. I do miss that. Like, I miss summer thunderstorms. Like, Texas, sometimes. Texas is rainy this year, I hear. But in the past, it wasn't. It was like, when I grew up in Wisconsin is where we had a lot of summer thunderstorms. That's almost the only thing I miss about Wisconsin. So putting that big wash over the top there. And we can see the difference if we just look. Do you see how that makes that so much more brassy, more yellow? And this side dulls down the orange. You don't lose it entirely. You can still see a little bit of it. But it definitely slides it away from that orange, more toward a gold or a muted out yellow tone metallic. Yeah. Yeah, Kiri used to not like the really loud thunders. The Kiri and Leo both didn't like it. They weren't like panic dogs during storms, but they definitely did not like it. And they'd wake up in the middle of the night, and then I would wake up because I'm a light sleeper, and if my dogs are restless, I'm up. So I feel that. Cookie Tigress, this is the bronze golem from the Greek Odyssey Bones 5 set. We are doing a patina right now. We're doing washes to bring the metallic details out so that we can highlight them. we're going to do probably at least one more color of wash treatment on this. Now, one thing I will, while we're waiting, and actually I'm going to hit that one too, but while we're talking about this, remember that complementary colors thing, where green and red together tend to make a grayish kind of muddy color? Well, if we do red over this green, we do risk doing that. Like, it'll take the life out of our green, and it'll dull it down. So that would be an argument not to use the Ergothoa red over the top of the green. What I've used this for in the past, I've done a brown, a red, and a green wash over the top of metal, like silver steel metal, that I wanted to be really just rusty and dirty and gunky, and I wanted all those different kind of, like, just to be muck, visual muck. In that case, over a silver or steel metal, the gray color that I got from the green and red together actually worked very well, and my first wash was a brown, so that it essentially ended up looking like dirty, rusted, kind of oily, gunky metal, with some color variation, because every once in a while you'd get a hint of the red or a hint of the green. So once again, we're back to color theory. When you're doing multiple washes of multiple colors, think about how those colors interact. And you can always look at your color wheel to get an idea of how they're going to interact. If they're across from each other on the color wheel, chances are you're going to get something that's a bit muddy, a bit brownish, a bit grayed out. If they're more next to each other on the color wheel, then instead it's going to shift your color. Like here, where we took orange kind of more toward a gold. It's not nearly as orangey as it looks over here once you have that green patina on it. No, I am not mixing up NMM and TMM. Or did I say NMM? I didn't mean NMM, if I did. This is using washes over TMM. It's TMM. Although, Sidestorm, never forget that if you're going to do really, really good TMM, you are going to use NMM types of shading and highlighting tricks to make it look right. Especially if you want it to photo. This is the same kind of technique I worked with on, and it wasn't Mr. Grumpy, actually, Greywolf. It was orcs. When I did my orcs, I did my orc general for my space orc army, and I used that kind of thing on it. I'm more likely to use metallics for gaming models because they can be faster. Whereas doing NMM on an army, especially an army of orcs, is just cause to have your head examined. Mr. Grumpy actually has browns and reds because his stuff's supposed to look like oily blood and battlefield dirt ground in and not properly cleaned and tarnish. So I chose browns and reds over the steel on that one. There are a couple different browns and reds. Like there's brown liner, russet brown, and I want to say... I'm trying to remember what I used. Maybe it was gory red or carnage. Or the one down from carnage. But yeah, no, it was different stuff that I used the red and green together. Really, that was it was on those orcs that I discovered this whole thing about if you want, like a main color, like if you're putting multiple colored washes over metallics and you want one color to be stronger, do that one first. Everything you add over the top of that is just going to modify your green. It's never a distraction unless you're using really vibrant colors, Trash, in my experience. Like, the whole point of doing this is really to get those off-color hints so that you can, like, even accent them. Usually, when you're just doing the wash, you really have to try to make those different colors stand out. Like, because when you're just layering it over and over and over, it's not going to be natural to the wash. It's more just going to want to kind of homogeneously mix. So I'm more likely to dab on other colors if I'm looking for accents, and then I can place them correctly. And I never use really bright colors. This is where Michael Proctor and I differ. And I don't know what he's doing these days. And he may actually have walked a little bit away from the really, really saturated colors. But like he would use very, very bright colors for highlighting and for shading metallics. And so you can get a lot of interesting layered, really bright effects. It's the same kind of thought process that they used to use a lot of, there are some painters who were quite famous using metallics back in the old Golden Demon days who would use inks because they were such bright colors, and they would get really interesting effects layering those inks over the top of the metallics. No, you can't make any paint into a liner if you're talking about like Reaper liners, unless you rebuild it in a liner base. But I mean, can you line with any paint? Yeah. I mean, you can thin any paint enough to use it as a liner, Jazzy. But if you want it to work like a liner, as far as when you thin it down, it makes a really nice wash and it has a bit more transparency, you know, like the Reaper liners do. That the liners do that at Reaper, from Reaper, because we mix them in a very specific base. And it's different from all the other bases that we use in the company, in our paint line. So when I say something is a liner, like Death Knight Black, and it indicates it on its fast palette box, it actually says liner in parentheses after it, that means that this has been built in the liner base to act like a liner, an MSP liner. So it's going to be a little bit more transparent, but it's going to be adjustable depending by how much water you add, and it's going to have extra flow in it, and it's going to be very easy without adjusting it very much. You can get good fine lines from it. And also you can use it as a bones wash if you want to. So a lot of people will do a starting wash over their bones just to bring out details. So you can use this like that. Hopefully that asks the question. But yeah, I mean, if you ever have like a color being a distractant, like if I had a spot of green that was showing up that I didn't want, which isn't going to happen actually, because I'm going to verdigris this, so any green showing up, I'm just going to work off of. But like if I put a red wash, if I did decide to do a red wash over here, and I had a bright splotch of red, I would just, if I really didn't like it, I'd just take a little bit of my main metallic, just paint it over the top, just like I did down here, where when I got a wash I didn't like as much, and just go over the top again with green or whatever I was using. Remember, you're going to come in and highlight this, and you may also add other details. Like you may come in and line at some point in some parts. But yeah, and this is just the first step. Like we haven't even gone farther. Like you could do this and you'd be pretty happy if you were just doing a basic bronze that had been out in the rain and was starting to discolor. Let me get, I want to do the one on this shoulder, but we're going to build it up a bit on this shoulder. So putting a big load down so I can spread it out all over. Again, the softer the brush, the fewer bubbles you will get in your wash. If you do get bubbles, just blow. Use a proportion of wash that makes sense for areas you want to stay filled in with the color. So here I've got these big grooves that I really did want the green to pool in, and that's why I started with such a big brush full of wash. You get a feel after a while for how much wash you really need on your brush for various areas. Get the area back here. Then I want to get the area on the underside. So just as a reminder, we used about 2 drops of water. We used 3 drops of gloss sealer, and we used 2 drops of our pine green 9010. And then we also used 1 brushful of our actual metallic that we started with to create this wash. So this wash has metallic flake in it. You can see the little sparkles. It's got the green. You're getting this interesting pattern of splotchiness around the edges because of the gloss sealer. It's giving this more body. It's allowing it to stay in the details and fall off the top surfaces. It's still jelly enough. The less water you use, the more the wash will have a tendency to pool on top areas. I'm not so concerned with that right now because I'm going to be highlighting those areas anyway. Sweet. Just catching up with chat, making sure you guys don't need me. Alright, so as this dries, I'm going to want even more green to be in there. And I may even, and this is where you take this and you adjust it. Like this is your start. This is your base start. It already looks pretty good. And like I said, if it was a gaming model, you could just rock this. You do the entire model like this, do that, add some color accents, you're done, and it looks great. You could do that. I need to figure out how I'm going to be highlighting this area and shading this area. I think I'm going to use like Death Knight Black over the facial area. I have to really decide how I'm going to... I may do the hands and this underside all in. Because I thought about it this morning and I was like, you know, he's all metallic. So even these sculpted muscles is bronze statues. So I may do that stuff. I may do in the darker scorched metal. And just to differentiate it, because I don't want the whole model to be the same color. I do want some changes, so... Oh, you just let it do it. You just let it rock. I mean, I know that I want these areas to be filled in, Father. So I'm just going to let that dry. And then if I want to, if I really want a lot of green up at the top here where it's run down, I just add more. Because I haven't added a lot of water to this, it does have the capacity to just be dabbed on and make these pools despite gravity. You can see how it did it here on the edge of the palette. So really, it's just like patience, and then I'll just bring in another layer. The other thing I could do, honestly, is just touch it up. I mean, I could always just take some green and paint it on there. But while it's drying, I don't care if it runs. It's going to generally run into cracks and sit there because that's the process. That's what happens when you put the sealer in that wash. That's why I'm not using water or not using a lot of water. Instead, I'm using the sealer to give it body. And this is something I always do with washes, but usually I'm not using gloss sealer. Here we're using gloss because we're going over a metallic, and we want the metallic to keep some of its shine. We don't want to dull it down. When you put a matte sealer over the top of a metallic, you lose a lot of its life. And we're already going to lose life because we're adding pigment. So we don't want to totally knock it down. We still want to be able to see the shine, and we still want to be able to, like, you know, work with it and augment it in places. We don't want to really lose it except in the, like, the areas where we really want to pick up verdigris or dirt. So for me, like, this is just minor. I don't even bother, like, trying to fiddle with it. Trying to fiddle with a wash. If I really wanted it just to dry up here, I would have tilted the model. I would have actually set it so that gravity was going a different way. But it's more likely that you don't have as much verdigris up in these areas because the water would run down and pool. So you're going to get a heavy load of verdigris exactly where this has run. So if you're doing weathered effects, like that are oxidation effects, like in other words, you're going to get the heaviest load of rust or verdigris where water pools, then it's to your advantage to utilize this and see where your wash naturally runs, because where your wash naturally pools is where water would have pooled if this model were real. And so then you concentrate your verdigris effects on those areas. So you can use gravity to actually clue you in as to where water would naturally stick and where you would get verdigris. Does that make sense? Like, it's not perfect, because obviously I'm getting some pooling here because probably of capillary action, and it didn't go all the way down in here. But that could be also because water would naturally run off the sides of this area, right? Because these are tilted down, so maybe that's why it's sitting there. It could be, gravity could be smarter than me on this one. Fluid dynamics could be smarter than Anne on this one. So I'm gonna let the, especially because there's consistency. So I was holding him like this, and you can see that there's actually consistency where it pooled in the outer areas on both of these sides and not up top. So that to me says that's actually the way the fluid would work. But yeah, don't overthink it with washes. Like, it really is, you're setting up something. You're not just going to leave it like this unless you want to. So I have so much doctoring that I could do to this still that any flaws at this stage in the process are just forgettable. Like, I don't even bother to even look for them. Because it's going to change again if I add another wash. And then if I bring in, like, more colors to kind of, you know, build up verdigris or change the color or shade and then to highlight. So it's going to have a lot of changes to it. I think I am going to take a picture of this, though, at this stage. I might do a handout on this on the Patreon if it turns out well. So I'll do a work in progress shot real quick. I'm going to push this out of the way, get this guy here, get a good shot of how it looks. It definitely looks brassier. Like, it's so not orange. Like, it really cooled it down. But it looks very bronzy. So I'm very happy with it. I'm happy with our starting color. I'm happy with where it's going. Thank you, Quindy, for that. Yep, I do have a Patreon. It's cool. I talk about Master Series Paint a lot in the $5 tier, and then we do tutorials on the other side. I think I'm going to use one of my Dungeons and Doggies models for a tutorial this month for the $10 tier. I was thinking about doing fur texture on the Husky, because I don't think we've done a fur texture on a 28, except for like wet blending a wolf or something. So I could do a pattern thing. And blue eyes. Because dogs have bigger eyes, like they're sculpted at human, like human figure size, but because there's no whites to worry about, you can actually do colored eyes on a dog figure. So, all right, we're looking pretty good here. Let's think about our next wash, because we're not dark enough for me yet. Like, this is great verdigris, but we're not dark enough. So I have to ask myself now, what am I gonna use? We're gonna get out our friends here again. Could also add in russet brown. So let's back up. Get this out of the way. Oh, I'm going to put a little water circle around my metallic so it doesn't totally dry out. And I'm also going to do one around my wash. So I run my wet brush around the outside of the well. Kind of makes a water cushion up on the side of the well, which means there is a puddle of water going around the paint, but you can still use the paint in the center, and it's just fine. It just essentially means it's easier to clean up for me because metallics and gloss sealers tend to stick very, very hard to the palette. So if I remember to do that, it just usually means it's a little easier to get up afterwards and less soaking. All right, so colors that we could use. We've removed our green because we have used it already. If we used red, we would take this back toward warm, but we would also like make our green gray out. And I don't want that because I want some green verdigris on this model. Uh-oh. So Ergothoa red is out of the running. I'm going to put it away. For this model, it is not the best choice. That leaves us with some bluish purples, some purples, and some browns. Oh, the doggy fur texture. Yeah, I've got that Husky Paladin I wanted to paint. It would be fun to do like a Husky, and because I think she doesn't have, she has some sculpted fur texture, but I have to look at it. I'll either use the Husky or I'll use something else. But I've had my Dungeons and Doggies models staring at me, and so I feel like I should use them. Because doggies are fun. All right, so if we use the russet brown, it's going to make our make this a little bit more muddy of a green, probably. It's going to take everything warmer and browner, which is very in keeping with bronze, right? When it weathers, it tends to go brown first, and then it goes to almost black. So we could use this, although I don't want it to really take stuff olivey, but taking it olivey wouldn't be a deal breaker. I can always come back with a more vibrant green to build it up. So this is possible. Purple's just going to make us darken down. It's going to fill in some of that verdigris. It is pretty bright. It's probably going to neutralize. It's even further going to mute out this, the bronzy color that we have, though. Because this is a pretty strong purple color. And the bronzy color is kind of yellow. So again, we're working with these complementary color things. I kind of like how the bronze looks now. I think I don't want to cool it off more. I don't want it to go, like, too cold. And so I think Kraken Ink is out. That leaves us... And I might say that the Black Indigo might be out. I don't know, though. This one, jury's still out. I might keep Kraken Ink and Death Knight Black out and see if I might put them in touches for shadows at the end. But I think for an overall wash, I might use either of these or a mixture of both. Oh, I see. So they can't stare at you. Yeah, that's why I stopped painting eyes early, guys. That's the root of why Anne doesn't give her models eyeballs till the end, is that I didn't want them staring accusingly at me while they were still undone. All right. So a mixture of these colors will probably give me a regular color that's very similar to this metallic. And I think I'm going to try this. I'm going to mix 1 drop of russet for that warmth and 1 drop of brown liner for the dark, and see if that gives me a good definition on my details, because that's the next thing I'm looking for. I've got a base that's kind of green and verdigris now. I want some definition on my details, especially in these little guys here. Like, in these small areas, if I do verdigris, I'm probably going to have to come back and add it, because it clings in the shadows and there's not much room for it to cling to. Unlike up here where we have some nice big green puddles, and up here where it's really giving us a nice patina. So for these detailed areas, for sure, I just want a darker shadow so I can bring out these details a little bit better. The darker our shadow, the more these little sculpted details are going to pop out when we highlight them. So depending on how sharp you want these little details to come out, that should be your call as to how dark of a wash you need. Oh, you missed the color wheel, Val. I told you, you were not in chat, but I said, Val, if you're out there, run away, the color wheel is here. Because we talked about color theory earlier. But you missed it. You were good. Your inner voice has guided you away from it. So just don't watch the VOD, man. Don't watch the VOD. All right, 1 drop of that. Had a little bit of dried paint there in the first part of that snozzle, so I'm going to take that chunk out of there. Unfortunately, that craziness is, of course, what allows us to get these awesome results, but... And then 1 drop of brown liner. Then we're going to use the same formulation we used for our previous wash, which we worked out. So we're going to use 3 drops of gloss sealer for body. Three drops. Then we had 2 drops of water. And finally, we had 1 brushful of our actual metallic. More or less. All right, mix that up. It is darker than the green, that's what I wanted, and it still has some warmth from that russet brown. So this is actually a pretty good bronze shading color, I think. Fair enough. And you can judge how effective or how dark or light your wash is by watching how it falls off the side of the palette here. So if we come in closer, you can see that it is slowly turning quite transparent. And that's what you want. You don't want it to like totally overwhelm all your metal. You still want a trace of that. You still want it to work like a wash. So there we go. So this is a good bronze shadow-like color. Like if I was gonna paint a statue like bronze and just highlight it, if I was gonna start it with regular colors, that's actually a pretty good bronzy, dark bronzy, old bronze color. All right. Let us try this out. Yeah. The only thing we don't have is the reddish color from that, like because we don't have we're kind of skipping those stages. That, and I'm just not sure I want the red in there because it occurred to me that since I was putting red in the glowy aspects, that I might want some difference between them. So I think we're also going to put this on up here. It's not going to affect it much. You'll see how, yeah, it's not going to affect it much. That's the problem with dark metallics, is that they have so much pigment in them already, you don't get much when you shade them. But I'll dab it in there just to look at it, because I can always just base coat over it. When you get bubbles, just blow on them. They'll pop. It's all good. All right. I really like this verdigris on the helmet, so I think I'm going to try this brown down here first, just like I did the last time. And again, I'm using my crappy sable. The craptastic sable. that is, and we kind of want to tune it because I don't want to lose. I still have a little bit of my green. I can still see a bit of my green in there, but I might want another hit of water. So as you work up with your washes, there will be times you're going to be like, all right, that's good. The color's good. It adds a nice warmth. It adds a nice dark. But I'm losing some of my verdigris. I can still see some of it, though. So, I feel like if you ever want your stuff to become a little bit thinner, you can add water or you can add sealer. I don't want this to go goopier, so I think the answer here is to add water. That moves us up to an equal proportion of water and sealer. When you start getting more water than sealer is when you start risking separation and also having a very, very light wash that doesn't have impact. Yep. Yeah, you'd have to use a big brush. Like you might, if you have an actual hanging lantern, you would want to put some sort of sealer on it for the paint to stick to. If it's metal, the paint might not want to stick to it otherwise, Val. But yeah, this is how the freaking Hobby Lobby and everything does the weathering effects. They just dry brush and wash on stuff that they've put a base coat on. So I'm lightened up my wash a bit so that I could keep some of my green. I'm going to put this down. I'm going to let it dry. I'm going to see what I've got. Actually, I'll do this underside too. Now that has very much darkened it down, made it much richer. We have lost a little bit of our green. I'm going to pluck some of this out of here. One way to deal with that would be to use our brush after we rinse it out and kind of pull it out in places. Just kind of dab at it with your brush. And what that will do is essentially allow the green to show through. You still have some of the brown wash, but you thin it strategically. Oh, yeah, so you'll want to prime it, put down the metals, but you use the same kind of thing. Yeah. I don't see why it shouldn't. I mean, plastic... I just did I don't know if you're still on my Patreon, Val, but I just did a $2 video about different types of things. I mentioned 3D prints, but if you prime them, and then everything you do after that is just like anything. Like, you paint it like any other thing, like resin, like metal, like anything. So, once you have a primer down, it doesn't matter what the material is. The same techniques will work. But yeah, my $2 video is all about, like, what kind of prep on various types of things. Metal, resin, styrene, you name it. Bones. And I touch briefly on 3D prints. Though not on the prep, because I don't have that skill set, so. But there's so many people out on YouTube doing videos about prep on 3D printed models, so. Just realized I forgot that part, so I'm gonna get it. Hey, no problem. Yeah, so that $2 one I talk about stuff like that, Val. But the short answer is prime it, and then you put paint on it, and you can do everything. The big difference between the various materials in the end is the tools that you use to prep it. Once it's primed or the surface is prepared for paint, you use the same techniques on everything. Alrighty. So I had to get that color up. And that brings a little bit of our previous. So now you can see all the stages. So we can see the difference between our first one, our first base coat, which looks so flat now, right? And then the green, which shifted the color and added more detail. But it's shallow detail, right? And then you get the brown in there, and you get this richness, right? Look at this, it's much darker. It brings out all these details. I can still see hints of the green in person so that I can go in and augment those areas. See the green right there? Now, the brown did overpower the green a lot more than I expected. Although if we only use the brown wash, you'd see that this would go a lot orangier and a lot warmer instead of doing the green first. So it would look different. You definitely get a different effect building up different levels of color. And what I could do, actually, I'm going to try it. Why not? But I could bring in the green again here and there and see how it works over the top of the brown. Let's see, where else do I see my green? I see my green down here. And here I can just use the areas where I see the green to be my indicators of where I want to put it, to reintroduce it more strongly into the color scheme. And I want to think also about, again, where would the water pool? Where would there be more green? Where would I build that up? So, working that in. And that's when you start to really get interesting. That's when you start to get excited and go, oh, this is looking cool. And you can go as crazy intricate or as bare basics wash and go as you want on these, right? I'm going to put, I based on this, I feel like I want to thin my brown even more, but this time I'm going to add gloss. Now, the call between whether to add sealer or water to modify your washes, if you want to increase transparency but still have a lot of body, so it's not watery, it doesn't just go flooding all over the place, then you add sealer. But if you want a thinner, much thinner and more watery, able to be guided into a really thin layer on your surface, then you add more water. So here I've got a good consistency of water, but I want more transparency. So I'm going to add another drop of some goopy sealer to my brown wash. Part of the reason this is also coming off of much stronger, by the way, is just that the brown pigments are naturally higher coverage. So the russet brown has a really, really high pigment load. So it just tends to make a darker, more powerful wash. This is the power, though, of learning to make your own washes instead of just buying pre-mixed washes. And I'm going to add one more drop of water as well. So essentially I'm thinning this wash. I'm diluting the brown a little bit. And I'm dancing on the edge of separation because remember I've got that metallic in there as well. And when you go past a certain point of where you're more watery than goopy, that's when those flakes tend to sink. So then it's not like a deal breaker, but you got to keep mixing up the wash every time you apply it. We did get some definition out of our wash up here, but just not a lot. We'll probably end up, when you've got a dark metallic, you end up doing most of your work with highlighting instead of shading, just like when you're painting over a dark base coat. All right, so now let's take this, and I'm going to actually just try it a little bit. Where do I want to try it? I want to try it back here. Try it on the back of the model, on a part that you're not as invested in, to see whether you like it before you toss it on these awesome scales over here that you really like. So now we actually, yeah, now I'm starting to see more of the green underneath it. So my wash was the brown wash was a little bit dark back here, but that's not too bad considering this area is in shadow and we've got all these intricate details. So I'm not disappointed by this, and I like the rich look, and I may reuse it on some other parts of this model. But on big surfaces like this, I'm not sure that I want something that potent. And if I do, I could always build up a couple layers of this. I'm going to take off a little bit of this excess, though. While it's wet, you can always come in with your brush being slightly damp and kind of tune the amount of wash that you have pooling if you don't like it. But yeah, so this brings this down another. It still makes it richer. It gives it a richer color. You can see that. But it's not giving us as dark an effect as up here because we've added more water and sealer to it. So we've lightened our wash, essentially. Even though we're using the exact same pigment and the exact same color of opaque paint, because we've added more water and more medium, we're getting a lighter effect. As if we had started almost with a lighter brown, except once it pools, it should actually give us that, see that darker line there. It's my kind of opinion that you should never exceed half and half water and sealer. Like, you should never add more water than sealer. You should always have, if anything, more sealer than water in washes. When you start adding more water, you risk breaking the wash. So, and you can experiment, and you may decide that you like the thinner, but, I mean, this is pretty watery. It's separating out, you can see that milkiness? That's because we've done that equal amount. Before, when I had a higher percentage of sealer to my water, that was not separating. Because that body that base gives you keeps everything in solution. Alright, I kind of like... I'm trying to decide which one I like better, though. Well, let's do these sides. I'm going to remix up my wash. Just to make sure everything is in solution. Brush it over these. We have not even finished our shading. We haven't even tackled the concept of, like, NMM style shading. But notice how interesting, like, this is our just base coated, right? So, like, but you can see kind of the difference. Also see how much lighter, how it doesn't make this, like, this is really rich and dark. And we, by mixing in that extra water and sealer, we definitely took the bite out of our wash. It's still changing the surface. You can see the difference from there to there to there. And that's why it's useful to, like, kind of have experiments like where you do this. Like, if you really didn't have confidence with this technique, what you should do is, like, you know, get a bunch of models that you don't care that much about and just paint them the metal and experiment with different types of washes like Rhonda does. She's great about that. Like, she'll, you know, she did that lineup of skeletons all with different washes on them, just kind of experimenting to see which ones she liked the best and which ones had the effect that she wanted. You know, that's the kind of thing that it really pays off to play around with washes that way over metallics or over regular. I like to do it over metallics because I don't otherwise use washes, but because you don't have... Yeah, and the same thing goes with contrast paints, right? Is you want to experiment and see how mixing those could... It's the same thing. Contrast paints are just thick washes. That's all they are. They're thick washes in a specialty base. So we can see how these details came out much, much sharper. These details came out less sharp, but they're bigger than these. So this lighter wash worked. And you can see it's the same color wash, right? It's just darker down here and higher impact than it is up here. But once it's dried like it's drying now, they look similar, right? You could add maybe one more layer if you wanted to build it up. But I kind of am happy with where it is right there. I think I do want to hit the shoulder with this. So we're gonna do it, guys. We're gonna run at full speed at our awesome shoulder pad. And oh my, this has been so much fun that we've used up our entire stream, guys. Look at the time. All right, let's do this. Let's rock it. big fat brush full of wash spread over entire surface. Always allow, see the dabbing motion I'm using, guys. This is how you apply a wash. You do not brush it nicely over the surface in long strokes. You blob it on, because you want it to self-level. You do not want, and you certainly do not want to go back at this point and add more brush strokes. No, you put it on, you let it pool. If you see any areas where you think it is too thick, that you don't like it, you come in with your brush, you clean out your brush, you squeeze it out, and you come back in with your brush to kind of slurp off those areas. Pull the paint off of them very lightly while they are still wet. Like if we want more of our green to show through. This is absolutely what I'm doing. But you do not want to do, what I see people do when they learn, when we apply washes, is I see them coming in and doing, you know, just kind of like doing this, like brushing the wash thinly over the area. They get a bunch of bubbles. The wash isn't really pooling. No. Don't do it. Just blob it on. Blob. Lots of blobbing. It's going to stay wet for a little while, so you can go back and take it off if you don't like it. Blob, blob, blob. Lots of blobs, though. None of those, like, silly, orderly brush strokes. That's not what washes like. Washes like to be blobbed. That is now a technical term. Now I'm coming back, rinsing out my brush, pulling off some of this, because I want that green. I want to see that green more. So I'm just pulling off here and there, but not necessarily anywhere up on the top. But anywhere where I want to remember that green, it's a thing, I'm going to keep it. I can see some of my green in here too. And that's where you start to really randomize. And then if you want even more color or more dark, then you could come in with yet another wash. Blorf. It's not blorfing though, it's blobbing. Different. Blorf, schlorp, blob. None of those silly orderly brushstrokes. Exactly, Kestrel. You can quote me on that. And then everybody will be like, Anna's a control freak painter. She did not say that. And I normally am, but not when it comes to blobbing. When you apply washes, you want chaos. If you're not chaosing, you're not doing it right. If you're not chaosing, you are doing it wrong. All right, so I'm going to take another picture at this point. Like I said, documenting the process here. Because I still have my base wash here. Then I've got my lighter wash, and I've got my darker wash all in the same. So this is a great documentary picture. And, you know, sometimes it helps if you guys get in the habit of doing this. It's a pain in the butt to take step-by-step pictures. But it can really inform your painting process. Because then it gives you a record of how things looked as you worked on them. So when I go back to my phone, I can see the green. I can see how this and this are a little bit lighter. And I can see how this waist area is really darkened down. So this will serve to jog my memory. And I can also take a picture of my, you know, palette. Things like that. If I hold the mini super still, you get a screen cap. That's funny. Yes, I can hold the mini up in a second. There. Alright, I just wanted to document my process. Like I said, maybe I'll do a PDF. Now you can get a screen cap. Wait, here, hold on. There you go for it. I'm holding it as slow as still as I can. There we are. You're going to have to get a screen cap from that one. All right, folks. Oh, well, welcome, Yig. Nice to meet you. I'm Anne. I work for Reaper, obviously. I made their paint line for 17 or 15 years, I guess. 15 or 16 years. It was around there. I started the year after I started working at Reaper. Now I'm out on the West Coast, but I'm still streaming for them. We do this stream every weekday. So every weekday at 11:30 a.m. USA Central Time, I throw brushes on the floor. And we work on a different model every day. We have a 6-model rotation. So in 6 days, we'll come back around to this guy. Although actually, that's not true because I'm going to be off for most of next week because I'm moving. So we will have a cessation of service, sadly. This coming Monday will be my last day until the following Tuesday. I'm moving and also have a trip to see my folks in there for the weekend. So yeah, so we have stuff. So I'm going to be gone, but then I'll be back. So don't forget us. Follow us. Subscribe to our YouTube channel too, Reaper Miniatures. You can find all my back episodes on there. So if you get addicted and you really need to listen to me talk for hours, you can go and look up Reaper Pro-Tips on the Reaper YouTube. And that's a great idea to do. Also join our Discord if you like the community. And the Reaper community is full of really helpful, awesome people. So you should totally join us. Yes, indeedy. Yeah, I'll be back tomorrow as always. I fill out the rest of this week, and then Monday is my last day of streaming for a week. So, yes, thank you everybody. What we did today, we talked about washes and metallics, and we did different colored, and we used our color wheel to talk about the color theory mechanics of different colored washes and applying them over various colored metallics and each other. We did some stuff we've never done before. Hey, see, I'm still capable of it. Even after years on this channel. Yes, I hope you guys had fun. If you missed this one, go back and catch the VOD. Seriously, we had some fun here. Thank you, everybody. What do we got later, Quindy? Do we have anything? I didn't catch it. But if Quindy said there was another show, then there's another show this afternoon. And I'll see you guys tomorrow morning when we work on... Oh, we're back to Crimson Herald tomorrow. Have fun, everybody. Bye-bye.